Hello, there's plenty of people in here, so I suppose we should start early, I guess, since you're all here already. I hope you're all doing well, and you've come across from the latest video, the how to get a tape delay out of a reel-to-reel recorder. So if you have seen that video, if you've come across from the premiere, then welcome. Welcome. If you haven't seen that video yet, then you might not know what we're going to be talking about in this stream, but no worries, we'll be addressing lots of questions. But we're going to be taking ones regarding the video first. But I'll let you all get settled in right now, and we'll just think about what we've seen. What we've seen. Did you enjoy the video? That's the first question for you guys. What did you feel about it? Did you enjoy it? Was it informative? Let me know your general thoughts and feelings, and I'll start looking into the chat and seeing who's all here and what your opinions are. So yeah, we'll get started on that. So get your questions into that chat, and we'll begin. And we will begin. Yeah. Phil loving the space echo pedal, but love to have a real tape one. Yeah, there's a lot of pedals now, sort of replicating the old tape machines. You can get the Echoplex and that sort of thing now as a solid state pedal as opposed to an actual tape machine. But there certainly is nothing like having the real thing. So yeah, if it's they're not practical and they're not cheap either, but to get a real one, to get a real tape echo, nothing can beat it in terms of just an experience and sound, really. They're just good fun to have. Kim never knows what's happening in the videos, but she always enjoys them. It's good to know. That's good to know. Commenting plenty in the premiere chat though, Kim, so thank you very much for that. Thank you. I've seen your comments. I did notice you. Don't worry about it. Lucas is always happy to see cool graphics. Yes, I did a little bit of work on the cool graphics. Just sort of last minute touches. I felt it needed something. I needed something to explain the tape, how it records sound, how it lays down the patterns. There's actually little devices. They're very, very expensive. It's why I don't have them. And they're not obviously not made very much any longer. But little devices that you can put over the tape and it will show you the magnetic pattern on the tape. And they do look like just little stripes on the tape. So the graphics should be fairly accurate to a representation of reality. So they shouldn't be too far away from what the real situation actually is. Carlos now wants a reel-to-reel delay. Yep. Once you start seeing them and start messing with them, it makes you want them all the more. So I do apologise if I've given you some gas here. Uncle RJ's needing 13 minutes to catch up. No problem. We'll be here for the next hour and a bit. An hour and a bit. So plenty of time for you to catch up and jump back in. No problem at all. I'll settle with some other questions first, and I'll come back to you later on. Patrick says the video was excellent. Can't wait to get off work, go home, and try my tape machine out. Exactly. If you got one, get use of it. That's yeah. Good. Glad you enjoyed the video. The Guitar Ninja's asking what I think of the TC Electronic Flashback Delay 2. I think the Flashback is probably the only TC pedal in that line that I haven't tried and haven't used, so I don't have an opinion on it. Although if it's like their other digital pedals with the tone print stuff in them, then it'll have a lot of really good and very useful sounds in it. But having not used it, I can't say anything more than that. The Echo Rec, says Carlos, it's magical. There's lots of good ones. Echo Rec, Echoplex, the Space Echo. I was looking at Watkins Copycat. I saw one of those for sale around about the same time I was buying my Akai. They were a British company. They were one of the first ones making tape echo machines. So there's a few of them about. Some of them you can get cheap. The only problem is if they're cheap, there's probably something wrong with them. So the cheaper you buy it for, the more work you got to do on them to get them functional. And if it's mechanical faults, then you could be in for a bit of trouble. But yeah. Do you ever use a tape recorder just to record yourself and not as a delay? Asks Adam, yes. Occasionally, it's really good to have a tape recorder there for certain parts, especially like something like synth parts. Because we do a lot of stuff now, obviously in DAW with plugins, and there's lots of really great synth plugins, but they can end up sounding, although sounding very very good, they can just sound very uninteresting and kind of flat. But if you then record them to tape or record them with some effects on them and bring them back off the tape, then all those just imperfections in the analog process just brings them to life a little bit. You start to get a bit of tape compression, maybe a little bit of distortion if it pushes too far into the red, and all of those little things just make the fairly sterile simulated sound just sound much more lively and much more real. So it's really useful to have there as something to record onto. There was a little bit of my voice recorded to the tape in this video. So at the point where I was holding the reporter mic and sitting beside the tape recorder, you were hearing my voice recorded to tape. So yeah, I do it on occasion. But it's really useful to have something to, if you want that little extra something on there, like that little analog something, you can send a sound through it, take it back off, and then put it back into your mix, and it's just that little extra spice on there. Gordon asks, but what is the secret of Monkey Island? Not telling. Real tape echo is expensive. Frederick, yes, absolutely, indeed it is. Oh, it is indeed. Your chats are going quite fast here, so I'm going to catch up as much as I can, get through these. So bear with me, please. Can you do a reverse tape echo with a tape machine, or any machine in this case? Asked Pedro. Technically, yes. I could record a guitar part to the tape and then turn the tape around and play it in the reverse direction, and and recording the playback then would be the tape in reverse. So you would get that reversed guitar line that you could then put onto a delay. So it is, yeah, you could certainly do that, but it wouldn't be a real-time thing, obviously. It would be a case of recording it, flipping the tape around about, and then recording it back in the wrong direction, and you get it reversed. You can also do things like, record it at the faster speed and then slow the tape down, and when you play back, everything drops in pitch and slows down. And there's stories of bands like Black Sabbath and whatever discovering lower tunings because they played a tape at the wrong speed, and they're like, oh shit, it actually sounds cooler if you like drop the pitch of the song. Let's do that song again in a lower pitch. So yeah, a lot of other bands were like working with lower tunings based on tape machines running at the wrong speed and running in the wrong direction. David asks, how reliable is it as a tape machine? It's fairly reliable. There are a few foibles of the fact that it's 50 years old, and there's certain things that don't work as well as they used to. Anyone at 50 years old has probably experienced that themselves. So I'm not blaming the machine for that. So yeah, the selector switch that selects between it being stereo or which mono channel I want to work on, it's very temperamental. I mentioned that in the video. It doesn't select things properly, but I'm not tearing it apart to try and fix that, because I'm guaranteed I'll make it worse than it actually is. And there's sometimes where it won't go into record, but back it out a couple of times, put it back in, and it'll start to work. So yeah, there's a few little things that have become a little bit finicky over time, but it works like most of the time, and I can get it functioning fine. So it's reliable enough for a recording thing in the home. Obviously, this isn't a device that you would take out on the road and tour with. It's vastly impractical for that, so it doesn't need to be massively reliable in those cases. But it's reliable enough to be able to be used without it being a massive pain in the arse. Yeah. Do you understand British accent? I don't know who that's being forwarded at. Any of us in the chat, do they understand a British accent? I hope you do. Otherwise, you're not understanding anything that I'm saying. What's this, Carlos? About going to the Pedal Show headquarters and play with Dan and Mick. Yeah. I love those guys. Got on well with those guys. Maybe at some point get across there and go and see them again. It's been a while since I've since I've hung out with them, so that'd be good. I should send him an email, send him a Facebook message, see what we can do. I agree with Lucas. Kim, you are the doo-doo. Well, hey, Granny from Inverness, nice. Inverness is a nice place. It's been a while since I've been up north as well, so good place up there. If money wasn't a problem, and your current tape recorder started to fail, what would be its replacement? Asks Pedro. That's a good question, because it comes down to what would I want? Would I want another tape recorder? And if I did, I'd probably go for something a lot higher quality than what I've got right now. The Akai 4000D is a fairly, entry level a tape recorder for the time. There's lots of much more advanced tape recorders that came after, and much more expensive ones, and they can be very, very expensive. So money was no object. Yeah, I don't know enough about higher quality machines to like name a model number here, but there were some good Akai's, good Sony's, and probably other brands that I've heard of. Probably something with the bigger reels on them, the 10-inch reels. Something that can play at 15 inches per second. the big reels and the fastest speed. Something really nice. So if I wanted to go for a recorder, I'd go for something like that, another reel-to-reel recorder. Although that might be an ideal opportunity to buy something like an old valve-driven Echoplex or a Space Echo, a Roland Space Echo. Get a dedicated delay unit that's got all the features of a delay unit. Yeah, it'll be a toss-up between going for a really high-end big reel recorder and going for an Echoplex. I think a valve Echoplex would be really nice. Is it hard to find tape? It's a lot harder than it used to be. Certainly. I think you can pick up a lot of old tape. Like there's obviously a lot of old tape still, kicking around. You can pick them up for fairly cheap. You can get reels and reels of tape, and you might find something interesting on them. The little snippet from the tape that I put at the start of the video. There's a much longer version of that on the Patreon. The Patreon people can see. And I found a few interesting things on that tape, although because this was just a home use device, it's mostly just opera and classical that's been recorded off the radio at some point in time. But you might find something interesting. There's tape was used for journalism, going out in the field and interviewing people. It was used in police interrogations, so you might find something like that if you're lucky. It was used for all sorts of weird things, so you might find some tape with stuff on them. In terms of new tape, I think you can still get new tape, but it might be expensive and much trickier to find. And certainly there's different widths of tape. You probably have better chance of getting the big wide tape that you use in the Struder studio tape recording machines rather than like a 1/4-inch home device. But I've not really looked. I'll need to get some extra tools like splicing kits and stuff in case that tape breaks. Catching up here. Let me see what you're saying. Is there anything creative you can do with just a cassette recorder? I'm pretty sure I've seen people with cassette recorders doing similar to what I was doing here, and creating an echo machine or a tape, or doing a looper, doing a looper thing, because you can get cassettes that are just a loop of tape, or you can splice the tape into just a loop, so you can get just a looping sample and keep recording on top of it. You can do that with cassette tapes and cassette tape machines if you do a little bit of jiggery pokery and work with them. I've also seen people, if they want to do like a long delay from a cassette tape, pull the tape out the cassette, so it's a big longer loop, and then put it on some sort of makeshift spindle so that the tape has a longer amount of travel between the record and playback head, so you get much longer delay time. You can do all this with a cassette. It's just a little bit. You might have to be a little bit clever about it, but there are good videos on YouTube of people doing just that. So if you want to try and make it work with a cassette tape, have fun. Yeah, Tolman still sells tape. Yeah, okay. Again, it's probably I don't know what sizes they sell. They're probably selling a lot of the big stuff for the, I guess I say, for the studio, you know, 16-track studio tape machines, which is a different thing again. But that's yeah, it's, you can get the tape places. Fulltone makes a new tape echo. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see who's all doing them. I know what's the T-Rex replicator is like a small, it's a miniaturized tape echo. It's got the tape in it. It moves along. They do it as a pedal format, and there's probably other people doing things like that as well. So these options are available if you want something new and a bit more reliable than having to hunt around for an old device that you might not have the means to fix. Have I thought about a collab with any retro tech YouTubers like Techmoan, for example? I really love Techmoan's stuff. This video with the tape machine was very much my attempt at doing something like Techmoan. it was a similar sort of video format, I thought, when I started writing the script. So no, I'd love to do some sort of collaborations with those sort of guys. I'm absolutely up for all of that. There's lots of very interesting people outside of the guitar realm who are doing great content, who are very aligned with the educational style videos that I do. Would not turn down an opportunity to work with the likes of Techmoan. Boo boo. Let me just, I'm trying to fast read. I'm not good at fast reading. Frederick, I'm not going into my opinion about Mike Fuller. Yes, let's maybe actually, maybe let's maybe not. Yeah, there was that situation a little while back. I think Boss made a reissue of the Roland Tape Echo. They possibly did. The Space Echo that was in this video here, that was one that Boss brought to a Toman event a few years back, and got to talk to film it in action and mess around with it at that point. And I've been holding on to that footage for if I ever need to talk about the Space Echo. It's good to have it in the memory banks there. Yeah, I'd maybe get in touch. I maybe need to get in touch with Boss and see if they've got anything they can give me on the Space Echo, so I can compare them perhaps. Uncle RJ's come back. You managed to catch up. Good. Most of it went over your head with the tape machine, but it's an awesome old school thing. Yeah. Even if you don't understand how it's working, I think it's fascinating as a device to see all the mechanical moving parts, because all of our consumer electronics devices these days don't have mechanical elements. Buttons are pushing something on a circuit board and it's all doing it electronically, right? Whereas on the tape machine, every knob and switch is pulling levers or moving mechanical parts on the inside, and that makes it just intrinsically fascinating from a perspective of we just don't have that sort of thing any longer. I love just opening it up and having a look at how everything moves, the wheels moving, the levers, all the different integrated metal parts and rods shifting. Fascinating piece of engineering. Just remarkable that all that stuff could come together and work, really. Is there ever going to be a CSGuitars and Mum Look Mum No Computer collab? This has been floated before. There's every chance of it. There's every chance of it. I need to get in touch. Never say never. How long have I had the machine? That's a good question. I don't remember specifically when I got it. It's been a year or two, perhaps. It's only more recently that I've got it functioning. It sat in the back of the videos as a decoration for a little while until I could figure out what was required to fix it. Fortunately, you know, all the documentation that came with it. That was the great thing about the devices of that age. They all came with full documentation and full circuit diagrams because they were expected to be serviced and repaired and maintained. And it allowed me to see exactly what boards were what on the inside, what was the amplifier board, what wasn't, what part of the board I was needing to look at, and I was able to isolate, okay, these are the transistors that are the issue, pulled them off, got replacement ones in, and it made that fix a lot quicker and a lot easier by having the circuit diagrams there and by having the little note on it that said, oh, by the way, at some point in 1974, we changed something. It was useful to have that information on hand. This even has, where is it? It has the initial sort of certificate of guarantee with where it was bought from and the date it was bought. Lindair Audio in Nottingham in April of 1972 was when it was purchased. So it really is almost 50 years old from time of its initial purchase. So it's doing well to have survived that long. Boop, boop, boop. Scanning. Someone else is making an updated clone of the Space Echo. That's interesting. I'd like to know more about that. You know, things like the Echoplex, that name shifted over to Dunlop. I think Dunlop owns the rights for the Echoplex now, and they do little, you know, MXR style delay pedals with the Echoplex name on them, but it's not obviously the same as what it was. But yeah, these trademarks and these names can jump around. Although Roland, I suppose, will be a bit more protective of theirs, but someone might be making something very similar if Roland's not doing that any longer, because they like to keep things pushing towards the future as opposed to going back to old tech. Have I tried the Dan Electro Real Echo? Says Pete. If I remember correctly, that's not genuinely tape in there. It's a bigger box. It looks like it's got a tape, but it's not. It's just a standard delay pedal sounding like a tape echo. I've not tried it. I haven't tried it though. But some of the Dan Electro stuff's really good, so it's probably okay. I've had a lot of delay pedals. I started with the carbon copy, the MXR carbon copy. It does a very good tape style thing. You know, it's the Bucket Brigade technology. It's got the modulation on there, so you get that bit of wow and flutter sort of tape style stuff. I tried the Wampler Faux Tape Echo, the first version of that, and it was really good, but it was, because it's a digital pedal, it was still too precise. Because it did the modulation, it did the sort of decaying, you know, the sound degrading as it decayed, but it wasn't. It was too crisp. It was too nice. You know, digital delays are really good if you want the repeats to be exactly the same every single time, but that's not how analog delays work, and that's particularly not how tape delay works. So it was just a bit too. It was a bit too crisp, and I couldn't really get into it. But I've had a lot of different delay pedals, tried a lot of different ones. But the first time that I hit that chord and got that off of the tape machine, that was like, this is the sound. This is the one I need. This is the sound. I've finally found it. Yeah. So I'll never go back. Okay, lots of people liking the idea of a Look Mum No Computer collab, so maybe that's something. Maybe that's something to happen. Once I've got the current workload out of the way. I'll send an email. People say it's called the Echo Fix. Made by someone in Australia, used to repair space echoes. Ah, okay, cool. That's that'll go into the memory, and I'll take a look at that and see how much money I want to spend. Oh, there we go. There's the price. It costs it costs 2,500. Cool. Okay, that's not insurmountable. It's a big bit of payment, but it's not. You know, I've paid more for other things. Poo Ninja's here. Do I prefer stereo or ping pong? Ping pong's fun. Ping pong is fun. I do love that. I do love that thing. Throwing it from side to side. Yeah. Pete saying the real echo is more style than substance, but it certainly looks cool. Yeah, that's fair. There's a lot of stuff that's like that, you know, and that's fine. Whatever works at the end of the day. James really enjoyed the video. Well, thank you very much. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad it was useful. Yeah, what we do. There's a question. What's been the toughest video you've done to research? Toughest. In terms of the research, they've all been pretty straightforward. The problem with researching, I find, is not that the research is difficult to do. It's just the more you look into it, the more you discover, and then you suddenly realize, oh shit, this video is going to be 3 hours long with all the stuff that I've found. I'm currently still scripting for the JIFET's solid state amps video, and I'm having a real trouble narrowing that one down to a concise script at the minute. That's why it's taken so long, is because there's just so much stuff to talk about. It's like, right, okay, where do I draw the line about what gets included and what doesn't? At what point am I going to start losing people? At what point is it just beyond the scope of a guitar video to be talking about, you know, crystalline lattices and N-type doping, and talking about the quantum mechanical aspects of electrons and the holes and the movements and depletion layers. Like, where do we stop here? So yeah, there's that's more where it becomes difficult. So this JIFET one's kind of kicking my ass at the minute, just to get it narrowed down. I think the video that I did which was the history of looping, it had a similar sort of vibe. It was a case of the more you read about it, you realise that the sources don't always line up. Some people will say this person did this first, and other sources say no, it was this person who did that first. So you're trying to marry some sort of consensus from these different rememberings of history. So yeah, I think the history of looping was another one that was a bit of a task. And it took me forever to get together as well. So yeah, I would say those two are probably the most difficult from the research point of view. Can I do a video to clarify tap tempo and the best ways to use it? Asks James. I suppose that can go onto the list. That's an idea where I'm just like, oh, there's not much to it really. It's just you tap the tempo, clues in the name. But yeah, maybe you can give me more information on what it is that's unfamiliar to you, so I can get an idea of what should be covered there. Because really all it is setting the speed of an LFO. There's lots of devices that have some sort of low frequency oscillator or some sort of timer in them, and you can set the speed of that, and the tap tempo simply just sets the speed by tapping the tempo. That's really all it is. How about sticking a chorus or modulation between the tape and the mix to get modulation? That's absolutely a possibility. There's lots of very interesting things you can do by placing, modulation effects after a delay. So if you've got a very clean sounding delay and you want it to be a bit weirder, you can certainly put the modulation afterwards, so that then it only affects the sort of repeats, and you can do that. So that's something to be experimented with. Absolutely. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing such a thing and trying it out and seeing what you can get. Even putting distortion after the repeats can sometimes yield some interesting results. Sounds weird, but it works. Although a lot of the early guitar legends before effects loops on amplifiers were really a popular thing. They were running delay pedals into a distorted amp, so you were getting the distortion on top of the delay, and you got Eddie Van Halen and all that sort of stuff. They were doing exactly that, and that's why their delay sounds so different, because they were using old school delays that were being distorted. And nowadays we tend not to do that because there's better ways to do it now, but it doesn't give you quite the same sound. There's quantum mechanics and solid state amps? Question mark. On Gordy. Yeah, it's solid state. It's solid state electronics. It's all about quantum mechanical aspects of electrons jumping around inside the atomic structure. So yeah, yeah. One of the big problems with computing at the moment is that obviously to get more memory in the same size of chip, you need to keep making the transistors smaller and smaller and smaller. But there gets to a point where, and we're getting to this point, very close to this point in industry now, where you get to the point where the transistors become so small that quantum mechanical effects start having a really appreciable impact, and you get electrons tunneling through places they're not supposed to be. You start to get weird effects, and all your transistors stop working because the electrons can just like quantum mechanically tunnel. So we're talking about quantum computing at the moment. That's a very popular topic. There's actually some really good videos on YouTube. I think Veritasium's got a really great video all about quantum computing. Yeah, but at the moment we're at a point where transistors are getting so small that quantum mechanical effects are becoming detrimental. So yeah. Quantum mechanics and solid state is a very well married concept. Imagine having Neil deGrasse Tyson explaining how a D chord can have different wavelength when playing through solid states due to quantum mechanics. That'd be interesting if that's how it worked. James asking again about the tap tempo. Can tap tempo give better effects at different tempos? I'm still not entirely sure what that means. Send me an email about it. Find my email address, detail out me what all the questions you have about it, and I'll see what I can do to help. Because at this moment in time, I'm not entirely clear on what you're asking. Let's see. So Carlos, what were we saying here? Getting more from the amp because of preamp and the tape delay. Ah, right, yes. Especially the early delays were all valve driven preamps on them as well. So you were driving the amp more purely by having the delay in front of it. Absolutely. What was this one? What would happen if you made another 10 of your delay? What would happen? Ultimate delay. So just stacking as many delays as possible. Is that the question? Perhaps it's an experiment to have. See how many delays we can stack together and see what sort of chaos ensues. Probably just a mess. Probably just an absolute slurry of nonsense. Probably, but worth trying. Pete has a Tata. What is different about speak-on connectors? Are they better than jacks? Yes. No. In terms of electrical conductivity, no. Like they'll both connect a signal, but what speak-ons have the advantage of them being a locking connector. They push in, twist, and then lock, so you can't accidentally pull them out. Your standard quarter-inch jack cables don't have that kind of protection. So there are a bunch of advantages to speak-ons. They are really good connectors for sort of PA style speakers when you want to ensure that nothing can nobody can trip the cable and pull them out. They're sort of those style of connectors are more standard for hooking up sound systems and stuff on a professional level. We just stick to jacks because we're used to them, I think. Mick asks, did Diatrack set based 4-track? No, no, I've never messed with that sort of stuff. That's perhaps something to have a think about if I ever come across one. That'd be quite fun to do. An old school 4-track and record a song with it. Yeah, I've never done that. I've always recorded digitally into some sort of DAW. A YouTube short, how much delay is too much delay? Absolutely. That's maybe a short format video. I'll put the vertical video on that one. My play on time mind refuses to wrap its head around the laid back echo effect. Can't deviate even for a millisecond if anything goes wrong. I I think the way to think about it is not that you have to play to the delay's time. It's just that it doesn't matter what time the delay's in. is really what it is. We're spoiled by the fact that we can now use tap tempo delays and delays and DAWs where we can like just link it to the tempo of the track, and it just puts the subdivisions in time with the timing of the music. But for the majority of guitar music, delays weren't synced up to the timing of the track. In fact, there was no timing to the track. These all old music was just all over the place in times the tempo, and it doesn't really matter. You obviously want to set the time roughly to something that works with your track if you can. But I've been using the my tape delay on guitar solos and mixes, and it doesn't matter as long as you've got something there making the space. It doesn't really matter that it's perfectly on time for a lot of genres and a lot of places. So it's kind of like I don't worry about it, because it's just there to give this extension in time to the sound. It doesn't have to be exactly on tempo. Beep, beep. When am I going to dive into Kempers and amp profilers? In line 6 and whatnot? Probably never. It doesn't interest me, is the thing. This should be obvious from the fact that I've been messing around with a 1970s reel-to-reel tape recorder. I'm interested by old antiquated stuff that nobody cares about any longer, and there's much better ways to do it now. But I'm just like, no, but it's cool. It's got moving parts. That I find that interesting. As good as the modern digital modeling stuff is, all your DSP stuff nowadays is super good and very practical, and it makes total sense, and everyone should be using it live, because why wouldn't you? It doesn't excite me. I've got no excitement for it, unfortunately, because I just like to have all old school moving parts and old things. So yeah, the reason I don't touch on them is because I don't find them interesting, and because they do so much, it's like, well, what do I cover? What about them do I cover when they can do everything? Whereas if you get an old piece of tech that does just one thing and does it really well, that's easier to focus on just that one thing. But yeah, profiling just doesn't really appeal to me from any sort of excitement prospect, and that's why I don't really work with it. Oh, here's Uveri giving the all of the full reasons why Speakon's really good. Yes, additional connections. You get double the amount of connections. The waterproof, the weatherproof, all that stuff. Yes, they're just good. Let's see. Davis asks, he's got an old Technics stereo amp. What would happen if we made it into a guitar amp? You could certainly do that. A lot of people did do that back in the day. You will run into the problem of it's probably more of a hi-fi sort of thing. So it's trying to reproduce music as opposed to create a sound. So it will sound a bit odd and different, but to like a normal guitar system where it's it's not trying to accurately and cleanly replicate the sound of the pickup without changing it at all. A guitar amp definitely isn't doing that. You want to change the sound of your pickup using the amp, so you'll get a slightly different response, but it's totally possible to do it. There's nothing wrong with modifying a more hi-fi amplifier and throwing a guitar through it. What's the next old mechanic device project? Are you planning something? Not at the moment. I still need to work on getting my valve amplifier build, working. That's suppose the next thing. So I have put together a valve amp, and it's just I need to iron out a couple of details on that. The tape machine is now in as much of a working condition as it needs to be. The next project will be whatever I see on like Reverb or eBay that just really just takes my imagination and won't let me stop thinking about it, because that's kind of what happened with the reel-to-reel, is that I just got this itch to have one of them and mess around with it, and I just couldn't rest until I bought one. So whatever that next thing is, I don't know what it is just yet, but there will be something. There'll be something that I'll just go, no, that's where it's got to be, but I haven't discovered what it is yet. But something I'm sure will take my attention in the near future, and at that point you'll know about it. J. Laura says, will running a pedal requiring 18 volts with a 9 volt power supply cause a problem internally? No, because you seem to be saying here that it's still making sound when you do that, which means that it is capable of running at 9 volts, so it's all fine. Don't over voltage your pedals. If a pedal is designed for 9 volts and you put 18 volts into it, then there's a very good chance that you will rupture some components in there. Components are rated for a certain amount of voltage, and if you exceed that amount of voltage, you will break them. So don't go more voltage than you're supposed to. Going less voltage is fine. You won't damage anything, but you will starve certain components of the voltage they need to operate within their proper tolerances. That can lead to some interesting effects in sense of, you'll get lower headroom, grittier distortion, some modulation effects will start to make very strange sounds at certain voltages if certain components are starved, where the voltage biases are now way out of whack. So yeah, you can get some interesting effects, or the other alternative is the effect just won't power on because it doesn't have enough voltage to supply the circuit, to push electricity around where it needs to go. But there's nothing that can be damaged from less voltage. It's just that it either won't work at all, it won't power on, or it won't work within the tolerances it's supposed to, but that could give an interesting sound. I've got a video, probably a couple of videos all about powering power supplies and powering pedals. So go and check those out if you want more information on voltage and current and what things you can do and what things you can't do. I've got, I think the ultimate pedal power video is on there with where I was looking at the Anasounds K+, which is a fantastic power supply. You should go and check them out because it gives a lot of information on voltage and current and polarity and all those things. I'll keep you right. A new fossil find, Iomi. Wonder who they named it after. That's interesting. I have not heard about that. I'm going to copy that and paste that into Google for later on. I want to read all about that. Thank you very much for bringing that to my attention. That's the kind of thing I'm interested in. Now I need to get back to the chat window because I closed that down. There we go. I'm back. There we go. I'm got some bedtime reading for me. Thank you very much. Too low of a voltage won't work. Too high of a voltage stops working. Stops working, won't work anymore. Yes. Too much voltage and the magic smoke escapes. You don't want the magic smoke to smoke. The magic smoke to escape. Who created Flanger? Look at my Flanger video. I did a Flanger video recently for the Walrus Polychrome, and I can't remember whether it was covered in there, but I certainly was something I researched at the time. I think that's one of the situations where there's a bit of a discrepancy on who done it. Because some people say Les Paul came up with it, some people say it was John Lennon and the Beatles, although he's only credited with naming it. But there was lots of people at the time who were discussing the effect. So there's a bit of history in that video if you want to go and check out the Walrus Polychrome Flanger video. You'll get some information about the history of Flanger in there. Tata, what is the alumitone pickup and how does a flat piece of metal make sound? That's something I need to look into myself. I believe it works on current rather than voltage. I'm not entirely certain of how it operates, but that's a nice Tata. I might take a look at that and contact them and see what information I can get. Although they might be one of these companies who just doesn't want to tell you how they're doing it, because if they tell you, then everyone does it and they lose their USP in the market. So, but I'll take a look at that and try and find out. I'm not entirely certain at the moment. Do I have preferred styles of guitar tremolo? Are we talking about the tremolo effect, or are we talking about a vibrato arm here? Because those are different things, and it's the one thing that Leo Fender really fucked up was getting those names swapped around, and it just makes things really ambiguous and confusing when people try to talk about it, because you never know which one people mean. But a whammy bar is vibrato. Tremolo is when the volume cuts out periodically. Boop, boop. What about pulling too much amps, I mean current, through a component in a pedal that's not rated for it? No. The device will only ever draw as much current as it needs. The only reason more current would be drawn is if something is faulty, something's gone wrong, something's broken, and there's a component that is drawing too much current. And that's what fusees are for. Fusees are put in line to blow and prevent the device drawing too much current if something goes wrong. But no, if you reduce the voltage, it doesn't double the current through the circuit, because it will only ever take what it needs. You don't have to concern yourself about that. But if something does start drawing too much current, it will burn itself out. But you don't have to worry about that if you're just putting less voltage into a pedal. Any machine is a smoke machine if you operate it wrongly enough. Yes, absolutely. I agree with that sentiment. Are more expensive cables for guitar or microphone or effects pedals better than cheap? Check out my video about cable snake oil with Hosa. We talk about a few things in there, like gold connectors and oxygen-free copper, and do these things make a difference, and in what ways do they make a difference? Yeah, you want to make sure you have a cable that's a good quality cable, because there is a difference between a cheap piece of shit cable and a good quality cable. But if you are buying some sort of weird $300 cable, it's not offering you any advantage. There's a lot of really weird snake oil in the cable market, especially the high-end stuff. I've seen some really bizarre claims that just have no founding in physics whatsoever. So be careful about that. If you're spending a decent amount on a good quality cable, then that is important. Mostly for the longevity of the cable and to ensure that it doesn't fail on you at any point. Watch that video. It explains where these additional features actually make the difference and where they don't. And it should answer your question pretty thoroughly. Who created the wah wah pedal? That's a good one. There's a good bit of history in that. I believe it was. Now was it Vox? The wah pedal came about because of an amplifier company who were building amplifiers for horn players and trumpet players and whatnot. They were trying to amplify an orchestra, and they were putting like a tone filter into the amplifier, and he was testing it, and they're turning this knob, putting a signal through, and it was doing that wah wah effect. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. What if we put that into an effect for guitar? I believe that was the situation. that happened with the wah pedal was that it was someone testing a feature of an amplifier and went, this would be a really cool effect if we actually built it as an effect as opposed to like a control on an amp. So yeah. Jason asks, how do capacitors roll off the high end of a guitar signal? I think I have a Tiny Tatas episode that talks about tone controls and high and low pass filters and how an RC circuit works. So go and look at I think it's one of the ones from Atoman. I can't remember which video it is off the top of my head, but there's a Tiny Tatas episode that talks about tone control and explains how that works. It's a low pass filter. It's an RC circuit, but it's all detailed in there. Greetings from Colombia. Hello, Colombia. Thank you for loving my videos. I appreciate it very, very much. Welcome to the live stream. Just finished watching the video. Really informative. Excellent. I'm glad you liked it. Gordon asks, does Barry have any backgrounds in electronics and guitars, or is he merely a freeloading behind your cabinet? Yes, Barry is a filthy freeloader. He has no background in electronics. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Although, when he does pop up and have a question, he seems to be very strangely informed. So, perhaps he's hiding something. Yeah. What are your opinions on effects processors that have amp and cab sims? And what is your advice for combining them with real amps? Having cabinet simulations on there and amp sims on there is really useful if you want to go for an ampless setup. Obviously, you can run them direct into the sound desk. A lot of them will have the ability to run your fully simulated sound out to the sound desk and also give you a line that you can send to an amplifier for like a backline. So I think some of the more advanced ones will have the option to turn off the cabinet simulation if you're sending it through a cabinet. The alternative is to get a full range flat response cabinet, an FR cab, and a very clean, very high power solid state power amp, and then send it to that. And that way you don't have to turn off the simulations because you're essentially like a hi-fi amplifier and a hi-fi speaker, and it will give you the accurate sound. Whereas if you were putting a cab simulated sound through a guitar cab, you'd get twice that EQ shaping, and it would sound dreadful. So if you are using floorboards and you want a cabinet behind you for monitoring purposes, get a powered FR, and then you don't have to concern yourself with shutting off, splitting the feed and shutting off cabinet IRs on your digital floor units. Wailing Raven, is it worth keeping a stock low budget broken humbucker and rewind it in the future? If you want to, if you've got a broken pickup and you want to practice winding pickups, that's a good way to do it. Although you can get sort of the brand new pickup kits fairly inexpensively, and you don't have to cut all the existing wire off of it. So it depends. If you want to do it that way and you don't want to spend the money on new parts, absolutely, and you might get a really good result. It just depends on how much it's worth to you in terms of time and effort. But yeah, absolutely. I've torn apart old pickups to rewind them before, but I like to do all that sort of stuff. If you're into that as well, yeah, then I'm sure it's worth your time. Barry slander is not tolerated here. Who is better, Orange or Marshall at amps? I'm a little bit biased because I'm really into my Orange amps, as you're probably aware. I've got a lot of Orange amps. I work very closely with those guys, so I do really like Orange. Although there's nothing wrong with the Marshall sound. There's lots of great Marshall amps. They are, they defined the sound of a genre. They are the sound of rock and roll. And there's a lot of other companies who got their start from Marshall. Black Star, for example, they're an offshoot of that. Friedman amps are just Dave Friedman started modifying Marshalls and he's made that into his brand. So there's lots of really good amplifiers out there that are just totally based on Marshall. And Marshall themselves, in the very early days, were just copying Fender. So, I like Orange more so for their attitude and their marketing and the way they run their business. They're a really great company to deal with. Horrendously taxidermy tape echo machine. Could happen. Halloween's coming up. Okay, here's another tape echo question. Does the quality or cleanliness of the tape affect the tape echo machine? Yes. Tape, obviously, it's magnetic powder suspended on a plastic tape. You can wear out the tape. You can get to a point where the tape doesn't work as effectively as it used to. You also get to the point where your tape heads can become magnetized. I think that may be a slight issue with mine at the minute, and you have to demagnetize the tape heads, otherwise you lose a lot of high end. There's various things that can happen that will decrease the quality and fidelity of both the medium and the machine that's recording and picking up from it. So these things do need to be maintained and cleaned. The iron oxide will come off of the tape as it's been fed through. The things need to clean the tape heads every so often. That's another thing. On my machine, there's a little felt pad that gets really dirty over time because the tape slides across it, and it's designed to take any of the loose iron oxide off the tape before it gets to the tape heads, so you're not clogging up the tape heads and the rest of the machinery. So it's designed to take all loose stuff away beforehand. But obviously, if there's stuff falling off your tape, it becomes less and less capable of being magnetized over time, so you will lose some fidelity from the material itself. If there was a Super Smash Brothers for guitars, who would I play as? Oh, jeez. Who's good? Who's going to smash the other boys out the park? Who is the anime sword boy of of guitar players? Who would be my main? Let's see. I mean, I'm obviously a big fan of Tony Iommi. I love that Black Sabbath thing. I feel he'd offer a good move set. I think with his weird plastic fingertips and his left-handed ability, he'd be pretty cool. But maybe Steve Vai's speed would be advantageous in a battle situation. That could be pretty cool. So yeah. So slow and heavy Iommi versus a very fast moving Steve Vai. Could be interesting. Could be an interesting matchup. Oh, and then Uveri's popped in. Yeah, Uveri could come in with his massive 23-string axe and just decimate everybody. That thing's already stained in blood. Ugh. I can't wait for the time when people use the Line 6 pods, the Helix pods for vintage 2000 sounds. People already are. People do keep the old kidney bean in the studio for some certain 2000s era sounds you can't get anywhere else. Just that it's kind of good but not quite digital sounds. Yeah, no, they do a certain thing, and they do a certain thing, and it's I have seen people keep them around for just such a reason. George has got some opinions on Marshalls. They have great designs. I feel like they've become a bit of a lifestyle brand. Yes, over innovating, orange are still, pushing the boundary. Yes, I think so. I think Marshall have very much pushed into the lifestyle products a little bit more. With the headphones and the Bluetooth speakers and all that stuff. They're very much a brand. People know them as a brand. So their merchandising and their brand and they're branching out into that. There's a lot. There's a huge market if you're selling lifestyle products, if you're selling headphones, if you're selling Bluetooth speakers. That's really where the money is. Like, you're making a lot more money doing that than selling guitar amps. and Marshall have the sort of name recognition that they can do that. So I don't grudge them the fact that they're doing that. I don't, go for it. Go into that sort of lineup. Absolutely. Yeah, but Orange are very much, it's still it's family owned, and they were in it for making amplifiers and selling amplifiers and being involved with musicians and helping them make music, and they're still in it for exactly the same reasons. They want to make good products that people want to use, and that's what it is, and they're all about the music. The very different attitude from the two companies, but I'm not gonna diss either one of them. They're both doing what they need to do to secure that bag. Herman Lee jumps around so much it'd be hard to hit. Yes, Herman Lee could be interesting in a fight situation. Swedish Vikings asks, thinking about upgrading Epiphone Les Paul's pickups. Should you go for Fishman or EMG? So looking for the Swedish Melodeath sound, in flames and out the gates. You're asking the wrong guy if you want to have an opinion on active pickups. I really don't like EMGs. I think they sound total garbage. Every time I've ever played a guitar with EMGs, and I hated the experience. Whereas the Fishmans, I do quite like the Fishmans. I'm much more of a fan of passive pickups generally, but the Fishmans do achieve the active pickup thing while still retaining a lot of the clarity and headroom that I feel that the EMGs just don't have. So I would look very seriously at the Fishmans if you're wanting to do that. Herring's a DLC fighter pass. could be devastating. Do I know how Tony Iommi lost his fingertips? On his last day of work before he was quitting to tour the world in his blues band or whatever it was. He'd been, his band were going to go massive, and he worked in some sort of industry with a machine, and the machine came down on his fingers and chopped his fingers off. Was that not the story? I think that was about it. And to fight his way back, make himself some new fingertips out of melted down fairy liquid bottles, and get back into the thing. Yeah, but that's it. Last day of work, got probably just took his eye off the ball. No fingers left. Shame. But without that happening, there's a lot of innovations that Iommi made to guitar. Like, light gauge strings weren't a thing, and he was begging every string company under the sun to manufacture sets of lighter gauge strings, because the very heavy strings had too much tension for him to play with on his plastic fingers. So he was making his own string sets out of banjo strings and stuff like that for a long time. But he eventually was one of the driving forces that allowed lighter gauge strings to become a standard in guitar. So there's a lot of things to be thankful for out of that misery. John asks, do you feel that left-handed players are not given the vast selection of instrument models as a right-handed counterparts? Well, of course. I mean, that's objectively the case. There are far fewer left-handed players, and therefore it's less profitable for companies to manufacture those instruments. So you only ever see them on certain models. You don't get the same variety. You don't often see it. Although I did see the Reverend Foam Shrimp Triple P90 guitar exclusive to Merchant City Music is now being manufactured in a left-handed model. And I really need to go and buy one of those guitars. I keep talking about it. They're fantastic. But yeah, so there are a few more, but it's a very expensive thing to reverse all the tooling to not sell very many of them. So from a financial point of view, it doesn't make very much sense for the companies to be producing every model in a left-handed. It would be a net loss. So I understand it from the commercial point of view why they don't do it, but it does mean that left-handed players are at a significant disadvantage of finding an instrument that they like. They don't have the options. Where are we? I've lost track of the chat again. I do apologise. Swedish Vikings. I would also caution against looking at any. If you are looking at any sort of passive high output stuff, be cautious of that, because that can be detrimental. You can get a lot better results from a lower output pickup. And I know that sounds weird, but it is. Check out my pickup videos for more information on that. Guitar and drums are probably the only instruments that offer left-handed versions. There's probably many instruments that offer left-handed versions that I can't think of. But when it comes, there's a lot of instruments where it doesn't really matter if you're right-handed or left-handed, because they're not. You know, it's two hands working together to close keys in a lot of cases, as opposed to two hands doing independent motions. So it perhaps matters less on certain instruments. Uncle RJ is asking how often I lube up my tape machine. Everything's still in nice slick working condition in there. There's everything's still greased up the way it needs to be. I've not had it for all that long, and everything's okay on the inside, so I've not had to lubricate anything at this point. But yes, it's something I will keep an eye on as I use it more going forward. Swedish Viking is coming in with the Django Reinhardt. Yes, that's my understanding as well. I think I got all my information reading Ozzy Osbourne's autobiography. I think this whole story was in there. So, yeah. Your whole life got crushed. I understand why you'd be really depressed about that, and you think your career and your passion can never take off again. But then you see a guy who's only got 2 fingers and is playing better than you. It's like, well, okay, I guess I should pick myself up off the floor and and get on with this. This guy burnt his entire hand. Yeah, no, Django Reinhardt's a really interesting case study. What is your dream amp and guitar? I'm very happy with what I've got right now. Is the thing. I don't have this fantasy about any equipment that I don't really have. I'm very content with everything. You know, I've got my Strat. I've got my Les Paul, which now got the vintage humbuckers in it. I've got the Flying V, which is great. Really love that thing. You know, a couple of P90 things. I've got a couple of heavy metal things. In terms of guitars, in terms of amps, I've got some high gain heavy metal stuff. I've got some vintage stuff. I'm happy with what I have. I don't really have a favorite amongst them, because they all are tools that do a different task. And it would be like having a favorite screwdriver. Like, you need different screwdrivers for different screws. There's no sense in having a favorite. They all do what they need to do. They're all my favourite for the tasks for which they perform. Which is a very boring answer. I realise. But are there any guitars which, money no object, would I buy? Perhaps. Gretsch White Falcon. That's cool. That's a cool guitar. It's not my style of guitar, but it's a really cool guitar. It'd be nice just to have one. Then I've always liked an SG. I think SGs are cool. I'd love a really nice old SG with one of the big weird vibrato arms on it. Yeah, probably that. I've not got many other desires outside of that. Sorry, you're very the PRS snarling tagger. Yes, that would I would absolutely just to have that for the meme aspect of it. You're right. That's exactly what I would have. That'd be my main guitar from that point on. Paul adds, and that's what happened to the Guitarton. Was that auctioned off in the end? Yes, it was auctioned off. It made a fair amount of money. I forget how much it was went for in the end, but it went for a decent amount of money, and it shipped out to Germany. It's now in Germany with its new owner. I think I put a picture up on Instagram, Facebook at the time. So if you want to check back a couple of months, you'll see the Guitarton with its new owner. And it's in very good hands. And I'm very glad it survived the transit. Certain events have made exporting from the UK into Europe very difficult, and I had one hell of a time getting it there safely, getting it through customs and all the rest of that. But it arrived. It wasn't broken. And yes, it's now living its best life in Germany. Speaking of the guitar, and how do you feel about giving away part of your heritage in the form of a guitar to a stranger? I'm fine with it because that was the arrangement from the start. It's like I went into designing that guitar full in the knowledge that this was going to be auctioned off and someone was going to buy it, and making it a Scottish guitar with all that, the heritage aspects of it, was that decision was taken based on the fact that it was going to be sent somewhere else. So I designed it around the fact that it was going to be like that. So it wasn't like oh no, this is something so personal that's been torn away from me. It was a case of this is what I want to share about me with the rest of the world, and with whoever eventually ends up buying this. And it was, I was thinking, well, maybe some very rich Scottish people will want to own it, or maybe some Americans who are 6% Scottish will want to own it, But it's interesting that it ended up in Germany of all places, and I don't mind that at all. It's it's one of those things. It's like a very strong heritage for a certain country has, it is global appeal, and you can be anywhere in the world, be from anywhere, and still understand those same concepts. So. It's cool. It's cool that it didn't. It's kind of cool that it didn't stay in Scotland. It's cool that it was wanted somewhere else, and I appreciate that. Yeah. Gonna wrap it up real soon. So if you get any last minute questions, please do throw them in. But next couple of questions, and I'll wrap this one on up. Thank you for all being here. Let's see what else we got. Any recommendations on tools, equipment to do adjustment work? Instead of taking it to a luthier every time. Yeah, it depends on what kind of work you want to do. If you're not wanting to mess around with fret work yourself, then you don't need so many specialist tools. Fret work is really where the expense comes in. So if you want to be able to recrown your own frets, then you're going to be looking at likes of Crimson or a Stu Mac, and be getting some specialist files and all that sort of stuff. But in terms of just setups, you don't need anything specialized really. Some cleaning equipment. D'Addario do cleaning kits, and that's the stuff that I'm kind of using at the minute. So they've got nice little kits where you've got string winders and guitar polishes and cleaning stuff and stuff to keep your strings nice and fresh, and string gauges so you know how high they are, set your action, multi-tools and all that sort of stuff. So you need some Allen wrenches, you need some screwdrivers. You might want some measurement stuff if you want to be very specific at measurements. Although I just do it all by feel if it's and by ear. So the action is right if it feels right to play and it's not buzzing on the fretboard. I don't need to measure that. It's all about how it feels. So yeah, some basic tools, some cleaning equipment. And you should be golden. You won't need anything too specialised. But if you do want to check out what specialist tools are available for various different things, check out Crimson Guitars. I've got an affiliate link. You'll find that in the descriptions of my videos. And there's like a 5% off in there as well if you buy anything from them. You can also look at StewMac if you're in America. They've got a lot of good stuff, although they're fairly expensive. But if that's what you get access to, then you can take a look there as well. Ooh. Do I sometimes wish the Guitarton was in a music museum? No, because then it wouldn't be getting played, and that would be a shame. Guitars are tools to make music with. They're not They're not display items. I mean, they can be. I understand they do look nice, and hang them up and whatever. But I'd much rather the instrument was out there making music than sitting on someone's wall, never getting played. Augie. I'm assuming that's how we pronounce your name, Augie. Remember watching your clear tone strings video years ago? Yes, that was a good while back. Back when I was with Clear Tone, they do good stuff. I'm now with D'Addario for strings. I should really hit them up and do some more dedicated stuff for them. Uncle RJ, what hair gel do I use? I've not used any hair gel since I was about 14 when I used to spike my hair up. Back in the early 2000s when that was cool. When it was cool to have spiky hair. Garnier Fructus Extreme Hold. I remember that. No, I don't put anything in my hair. Bit of hairspray maybe. I do maybe a bit of hairspray, but I don't need anything like that. Gordon asks, if a tree fell down the forest and no one was around to hear it, what kind of effect would it have on your tone? Good psychological question there. Philosophical question to ask. We can all ponder on the meaning of existence through that. Greetings from Iran. Nice. Hi. Just wanted to thank you for your awesome videos. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm glad you're enjoying them. Uncle RJ asks, can I play bagpipes and a guitar at the same time? I can't play bagpipes at all. In fact, the last time that I even held bagpipes, I had them the wrong way around. I had them in the wrong hands and the wrong arms and backwards, and I don't know what I'm doing with bagpipes. No, fake Scott, confirmed. So yeah, I don't know much about that, I'm afraid. Paul Hudson asks, are build your own guitar kits any good? Don't understand how they can be so cheap. It's usually the hardware, it's part of the materials, the fact that nobody put it together. The majority of a cost in an instrument is in labour. It's in the time and effort it took people to put it together. And if you're being given just the parts that don't have a finish on them, and it hasn't had the time to finish it, and it hasn't had the people to put it together and set it up, and it's the cheapest parts they've just thrown in there, and nobody soldered it together, you're saving a lot of money on the instrument. But a lot of these cheap kits aren't good quality. Don't confuse yourself. And they require a lot of work to get them playable. If you want a good kit, again, check out Crimson Guitars. Again, the affiliate link's down in the description. That's what I built the Guitarton from for the Great Guitar Build-Off, was one of their kits. Obviously I had to cut a lot of that shape myself, but they will cut out shapes for you to your recommendation if you want a specific shape or whatever, to save you some of the work. And those are all very, very high quality. They'll still require a lot of work to get them to an instrument, but they're much more high quality than, say, I know Toman do some Harley Benton kits and whatever, and you'll see some really cheap kits. They're like, oh, he's 50 quid for a guitar kit, if you spend the money, you're getting the better quality stuff. And I would highly recommend going to someone like Crimson, who builds guitars, and getting a kit from them. You get a much better result out of it at the end of the day. Sorry, you're very. I'm just laughing at your question here. Would you rather fight 3 Kim-sized horses or 1 horse-sized Kim? In reflection of the question posed about yourself on the last stream, definitely 3 Kim-sized horses, because they'd be very, very tiny horses and would probably not be a threat whatsoever. Uncle RJ, thanks us for the live stream. Oh, it's 1 a.m. It's late. It's late or early, depending on how you want to put it there. Well, goodbye. Thank you for sticking around for so long. It's such a weird time. Thank you very much for asking all the questions. So yeah. I'm gonna wrap this up. I think if people are starting to leave, it's getting late for people. That's a good time for me to wrap up. And I've been on here for over an hour now. So I've done my time. I can be released. I can go and get dinner. I can go do other things. Thank you for sticking around and asking all the questions after our video today. It's been really good. I hope you've learned a thing or two. And of course, jump across to our Discord, where you can ask more questions. Where I and the community can answer your questions going forward if you didn't get your questions answered here, or if you just think of other things and want to be part of the community. Discord, the link should be in the descriptions of the videos. Also, consider Patreon if you haven't already, and all that good stuff. And don't forget to go back and watch the video if you're jumping into this and you don't have a clue what we're talking about. There's Yuveri popping in the link there in the chat. So thank you very much, Yuveri, for having that on hand. You're wonderful, darling. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'll wrap it up here, and I'll catch you on the next video, I suppose. But for now, ta-ta.